You're listening to Small Business Strong, inspiring conversations with real small business owners.
Kalin Seamans, thanks for joining me today.
Yeah, you're welcome. Happy to be here.
Kalin is the owner of Revelation Electrical Services, serving the Rockwall and surrounding areas. Kalin, can you tell me the services you offer?
Well, I'm a electrical contractor, so really anything in the electrician vein, design, build, service, all that jazz.
Awesome. Can you give me a 30,000 foot view of your company today? Like how long you've been doing it, employees, and you're welcome to share revenue if you'd like from last year.
I guess that's kind of a weird question because I've really only been in business as Revelation for about 3 or 4 years. Prior to that, I had 2 separate companies trying to figure out, my niche in the space, how that worked with my family life, having kids. But right now it's me and my wife both handling the major production and admin sides, as well as I have 2 other guys to help with production. Our revenue last year was, I think, somewhere around 350,000. So, still pretty small, but developing a lot of niches and spaces that are pretty specific, like theatrical lighting and design, high-end remodels, things like that.
Very cool. I'd love to get into those other businesses as well. But so for now, here's a question I ask everybody is, are entrepreneurs born or are they made?
I think it's a little bit of both. I definitely think it was there initially, but following that, I think I was definitely made into something that I wasn't born with.
Yeah, that's fair. So let's go back to the beginning. Tell me how you grew up.
I grew up in Rockwall, pretty standard childhood, I guess. Growing up, I really felt like the status quo, for lack of a better term, wasn't really for me, and really wasn't sure what that looked like. I started waiting tables just as kind of like an entree to everything. It kind of seemed like you're almost contracted, to serve the customers, and your work off of tips. So everything's kind of based on, your performance and all that. So that's where I feel like I got a taste for owning my own business. I started doing electrical work shortly after that. Well, started getting burned out waiting tables. So started doing electrical work and everything just kind of went from there.
Tell me about that experience, the transition after waiting tables.
Well, it was kind of both happening at the same time for a little bit. I was getting burned out waiting tables, literally picked up a paper and was, going through it and found an ad for electrician apprentices wanted, no experience necessary, and signed up and made the cut and was kind of doing both there for a while, because the waiting tables thing was, in the afternoon, evenings. And then of course the construction was in the morning. And I guess testing the waters initially, figuring out, is this for me? But ended up really liking it. So
that's great. So this was in high school or junior?
Shortly after high school, I made an attempt at college to appease the parents.
Yeah.
Made it through one semester and I was like, guys, I love you, but this is not for me.
Yeah.
So kind of went into the waiting tables and the electrical work shortly after that.
Yeah. And how long were you doing both of them? Because I think this is important because I think a lot of people don't just make the jump into owning a business or starting the process of starting a business, which would be getting, an electrical world, doing apprenticeship. Like how long were you doing both before you make the full jump?
There was actually quite a few stair steps other than the half and half waiting tables. I did that for probably about a year, maybe a little more, and then went full time into electrical work. The caveat there was that the small shops that I was working for didn't always have work. So there were some times that I initially would be like off or sitting at home. Kind of engaged with some other electrical contractors that I would sub out labor kind of go back and forth working for, my master and the journeyman under him for the main company that I was working for. And then, going and helping out, other companies from that point. And that kind of is where it pivoted, I guess, into the owning my own business, essentially.
Yeah. So can you give the listeners kind of a 10,000 foot view of how it works? Like, obviously, you started as an apprentice, but what's the time length, and then how do you kind of level up?
Well, just in terms of the licensing board, TDLR, you have to have 4 years roughly. It's actually in hours. It's 8,000 hours, but it adds up to about roughly 4 years of experience before you can test for your journeyman's license. Those hours have to be signed off on, and then you can test. Hopefully you pass, and at that point, you have to have at least 2 more years holding that journeyman's license before you can test for the master's.
Okay, so you're basically just doing electrical work under a master, and then once you get that 4 years, you can test, and then 2 years as a journeyman, you can test again as a master to get your master. Okay, cool, very cool. So what are the types of things you're doing as a apprentice?
Well, initially, I guess it's really just you're a gopher, and you're really learning like what things are, what you need in certain situations, which I think is really paramount in it all, is like wherever you're at to understand, what's going on and possibly what's needed.
So you're learning basic electrical skills, and then you're also kind of trying to get a full idea of how everything works and try to diagnose and just a little bit of everything.
Yeah, I really lucked out in terms of the guy that I was working under, in terms of like being able to witness his methodology. He was a really good teacher, so he could kind of like spell out, what was going on, what he's looking at, what we might need to look for. So I gained a lot of knowledge there.
Were y'all doing more residential or commercial, or a mix of both?
It was almost purely residential to start, and then over time, commercial got introduced in, as well as a little bit of controls.
Awesome. Where did the idea of Revelation Electrical begin?
Well, like I said previously, I had 2 other electrical companies that I had previous as I was trying to find my niche. And I think the revelation came about revelation when I really started to realize what it was all about, which is relationships. I think any successful entrepreneur really has come to realize the value of relationships. Whether or not they hold them in high regards or a tool to be used for their game, that's another question. But for me, the revelation was that what was really important in the day-to-day were the relationships.
That's great. So let's go back to, you're an apprentice. I mean, from the time you were an apprentice, was that seed planted in your mind of wanting to eventually go out on your own? Or was there a point in time where you were working for somebody and you're like, I want to work alone?
It was really, for me, more about stability, I guess. Originally, like I said, with the inconsistent workflow and trying to find some stability for my own finances, because especially if you're only making an hourly wage, to have, a day, 2, 3, 4 days off, is really detrimental to your lifestyle.
Yeah.
So that was probably it initially. And then, the kind of mindset of waiting tables, I guess, kicked in and be like, oh, well, I could do this on my own or on the side and supplement my income, to where those 2 or 3 days off don't hurt,
Yeah. I mean, that's how I started. It was a nights and weekends thing for a long time, and then we finally decided to go full time. But so I want to talk about the other 2 businesses. When did you start them, and when did things end? How did things end there? And just kind of talk to me about them.
I guess I started the first one shortly after I passed my master's test. And at the time, it was really just an avenue to, further what I was doing. You really can't advertise or, take permitted jobs, or if you're not, legit, essentially.
Yeah.
So really was just looking for that leg up business wise. After that, it kind of morphed into, about that time I had my first child, and was really struggling with like, what does this look like? I have, no qualms about me missing a meal, if things are slow, but whenever it comes to kids, that's, I'm not on board with that.
And your wife too.
Yeah. So I took a job with the city of Dallas as an electrical inspector at that point, and did that for about 3 years until I just decided that I couldn't do it anymore. I was also contracting on the side during that time.
Very cool. So your contract, and then, so was that the first and second business, or was that just the first one?
Well, the second was, kind of a false start, if you will. I was doing the city of Dallas electrical inspector thing, and I had a friend at the time who, really wanted to do his own thing and wanted me to be his master. So that was, not really me directly owning the company, operating the company, but me being the master for it.
What was different about this time? What was different about Revelation did you just grind longer, or did you have a different business model going into it?
It was really a different business model. Really, the first rendition was, I'm sure you see a lot of, service-oriented companies are, really pushing, lead generation and, time to close and all the traditional sales tactics. And it just, didn't sit right with me. I felt really demeaned the customer and also me by effect.
So your method of getting clients, we're going to talk about this later, but let's just kind of dive in softly to it. It sounds like it's more referral relationship based.
It is. Cool. Exactly that.
Amazing. So what advice would you give to someone who's thinking about starting their business? They're in the same place you were years ago, maybe waiting tables, or maybe even, being certified, working for someone else. What advice would you give them if they're thinking about stepping out on their own?
Just the revelation I had about relationships, just take into account that, everyone that you meet is, I'd say asset, but I think that's the wrong word. I mean, every relationship is, treasure to not only what you're doing business-wise, but to yourself as a person. So, jumping in there, caring about those relationships initially, is, something that set me apart and something that could set potentially anyone apart.
That's great. I'd love to talk about faith. How does your faith influence the way you do business?
Well, I feel like it definitely gives me a better stability about my business practice. Just the security that I have in my faith, as well as like, a constant thing to adhere to morally, ethically. And at the end of the day, I'm not really working for me. I'm working for my God, and, he's a great boss. So,
yeah, we're his stewards.
Yeah.
How do you rest? What does balance look like for you?
That has been a journey figuring out what that looks like. Whenever you own your own business, especially if, you're in the beginnings and it's essentially a one-man show, it's really difficult to find what that looks like. But over the years, especially like in conjunction with my faith, I have been able to find rest in the strangest of circumstances. I could be in the middle of, a big project, stuff could be, going wrong, but, retreating to that place within, and having that peace, you can find rest almost anytime.
So it's internal.
Yes.
Yeah. That's great. All right. So we talked a little bit about it before a few minutes ago, but so the number one way you get jobs is pretty much exclusively referrals, relationships. Is there anything you want to add there?
Yeah, I would say I'm probably a little spoiled at this point in terms of referrals. I mean, there are times when, things, especially this year, where things are a little slow at times. And, I think about doing advertising and then just kind of remember the grab bag of results that it is and, just kind of stay the course.
Have you used advertising before?
I have.
Okay. And how'd that go?
So the first rendition of my business, that was pretty much exclusively the springboard. And like I said, the grab bag of your results was not very encouraging. Really, really hit and miss. So moving towards a referral-based business model was really a blessing.
I'm a big fan of the referral system as well. What are some of the types of clients you get from advertising versus the types of clients you get from referrals? Is there a difference?
Yeah, I would say that there's a huge difference. Really, I would say it has to do with the mindset of the client coming into the interaction, as well as expectations on both sides.
Okay. Before we go any further, this is a perfect time to take a quick break and mention something I'm really excited about. If you've ever thought about starting a handyman business, the kind that grows from real referrals instead of expensive ads, I put something together to help you get started. It's called the Handiwork Startup System. This is the exact process I used to launch my business from scratch. And in the very first year, my handyman business cleared $89,000 in net profit. No marketing budget, just a simple system that builds trust, earns referrals, and keeps the phone ringing. If you want a straightforward plan for getting your first customers and building a business that actually works, the link's in the show notes. All right, let's get back to the podcast. I'd love to talk about how you manage clients, estimating invoices, taxes. There's a lot of systems out there. What do you like the best?
Just me being on the go as much as I am, I really rely on something that's just based on my phone. I use Joist for contractors, and I use that essentially as a CRM and as an invoicing estimating. So like a one point. As far as taxes, I do have a CPA, so I'm not a big fan of taxes, so I offload that. But all of that is kind of, parsed from my invoicing estimation systems.
I'm always looking for easier ways. So how do you manage mileage, or you might write your truck off, but how do you do receipt? Do you snap receipts? Do you just put them in a glove box and give them to your accountant? How does that work?
It's really worked all off of like my segregation of payment methods. I have, everything separate bank accounts, separate, credit cards, debit cards. It's all separate. So as long as I just use the right card or the right account, it's all separated. And then my accountant just has direct access to those accounts.
That's it. So they just look at your account and you don't need receipts or anything like that.
Yep.
Very smart. If you were starting a brand new electrical business in 2026, walk me through exactly how you would do it.
I would probably start, and I was given this advice a long time ago that I didn't really heed initially, but later on really came to find the value in it, and is stay as small as you can for as long as you can. I would really start on looking for the smallest jobs possible and really look to, have the focus be build my relationships, build my network. That is paramount. It took me a while to figure that out. Wish I would have had somebody telling me that to begin with. I may have, but I'm really hard-headed. So that would definitely be paramount. Steering towards probably service in terms of like building business and relationships. Nothing I feel like solidifies it better than for someone to be in need and for you to be there to fill that need seamlessly and with care.
So we'll talk about something that is tricky in the industry. So let's go back to, you're an apprentice, you're wanting to start doing side work. TDLR rules, you're not technically allowed to do side work on your own. How do you, is there a way that you can do that legally, or do you just kind of help friends and family out while you're getting licensed, or how does that work?
It's kind of a gray area. What I did personally was, in that in-between stage, I just had a really good relationship with the master that I was under, and kind of approached him saying like, hey, I want to do this thing. I'd, really like to be, covered, no matter what happens. What does that look like? And we kind of worked out a deal between me and him to where, I could take jobs that weren't necessarily permitted, but he had my back essentially.
That's great. What's one piece of advice that you give every apprentice you train?
Begin with the end in mind.
You want to expound on that a little bit?
It can really come down to absolutely anything that you're doing. If you're going out to the truck and whenever you come back after you're done with what you're doing, you want to have lunch, just, begin going out to the truck. I'm going to go and get this thing, but I'm going to go and grab my lunch so I can take it inside, and just give yourself a little bit of vision outside of the immediacy.
Yeah. I'm big on saving trips. There's been times I'm in and out 15 times, and I need to think, stop and think, and go out, get everything you need and come back in, for sure.
Yeah, it's either that one, begin with the end in mind, or don't put it down, put it up.
Wait, what do you mean by that?
Just what it's
with tools.
Yeah. With tools. I mean, you can really expound to pretty much everything.
Yeah.
But it's in the same vein.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We kind of covered this already, but for the person who's listening right now and wants to become an electrician, what would you tell them?
I would tell them, leave your pride at the door. That is one thing that I have seen more people go to pick up electrical work and it not work for them, because their pride gets in the way of them learning a new thing.
Have you seen that with some of your apprentices, or? Yeah.
It's everybody wants to be good at what they're doing, and to be able to sit with not being good at what you're doing is, I feel like, priceless.
And it takes humility to learn, because I learn every day. I'm learning new stuff, and I want to learn, and the only way we can learn is by doing it and failing, or by someone else telling us.
Yeah.
So I think that's huge.
Yeah.
That's great. What are you working on these days? Are you working on growth, hiring, marketing, enjoying the work, or all the above? What are you working on?
Really all of the above. I'd say my focus right now is probably developing and refining existing business, trying to figure out, how to do the lines of business that I have most efficiently, both production-wise and administration, estimating, business processes, just refining the relationships themselves, figuring out how to work better together.
Yeah, that's great. Is there any other questions that I didn't ask that you think there's value in that you'd like to share with listeners?
Oh man, probably. Nothing comes to mind initially, but there's just so much there.
Yeah. So who else would you suggest we have on?
I'd have to think about that one. I do know a guy that does like entertainment. Like he's essentially a ringmaster. He owns an entertainment company. He might be an interesting guest. That's Alex.
Cool. Very cool.
I'll refer him over to you, and you can awesome. Be the judge.
Awesome, man. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate you being on.
Yeah, thank you.
Before we finish, I have to take a second and mention something I really believe in: outdoor edge knives. I wear one every day. The best part about it, it has a replaceable blade. So no matter what I'm doing, cutting rope, breaking down boxes, or field dressing a deer, it's sharp every single time. And if you've ever been a guest on this podcast, you know that I give one to everyone who sits down here and shares their story. Outdoor Edge knives. They're dependable, affordable, and just built right. I trust mine every day, and I'm proud to hand one to the people who join me on this podcast.
Thanks for joining Small Business Strong. To share your story or to connect with John, email smallbusinessstrongpodcast@gmail.com. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode.